All right, what is up? Flashbacks back here. I'm gonna try something a little bit different today. As you can probably see by the title. Trying to predict how the Big Ten is gonna kind of shape up the rest of the year, how it's gonna finish. At this point in the season, we're on week 7. Pretty much everyone has at least played 2 conference games. Some have played 3. We're gonna see how that goes. Might be a little biased. Just gonna start it off. Went to Indiana, so could be a little biased towards the Hoosiers, but I'll try not to be. I'll try my best, but it may come into play. We'll see. So starting off before we start into it, you can see the only undefeated teams here in the Big Ten that we have left already: Oregon, Indiana, Penn State, and Ohio State. I think those top 3, well, not in Indiana, maybe Indiana, but we'll see. The top 3 should go to the playoffs. That's what I think. So we'll see how that ends up, and I'll try to talk about how I see potential Big Ten championship, because this website doesn't give it, and who I think would possibly make the playoffs from how it shapes out. But we'll see. Starting off in week 7, just trying to get the wins and stuff out of here. I think Maryland will probably win this game, even though I don't know the way Northwestern played Indiana last week. They looked pretty good. The quarterback, he was can't remember his name, but he looked really good against Indiana. Did not look very good against Washington. He played terribly. So I mean, there's 2 sides of him, so who knows which one's gonna show up to play in this game. But I'm gonna take Maryland just because I like the home teams more in the Big Ten. I've seen from this past week, Minnesota, Washington both winning on at home. Tough road games for USC and Michigan. Moving on, we got Rutgers, Wisconsin. I think this will be a big tale of how the Big Ten will shape out depending on who wins this game. Rutgers lose this game, it might start to be a downhill slope for them. They win this game, it could be a really good season for them. I could see them getting to 9, even 10 wins. Wisconsin haven't really impressed me so far. They've looked okay. Not sure if their starting quarterback is back or not, but if not, that's just more reason to not go with them. But I do like Rutgers in the home spot here. Iowa, Washington. Washington got a big win last week. Iowa got dominated by Ohio State. I think Iowa deserves a little bounce back spot. The Fighting Illini, I think they're a really good team this year. I think they could push to 9, 10 wins as well. Purdue is terrible. I don't even know if they'll win a Big Ten game this year. And hopefully, if they win one, it's not their last one of the season against Indiana. I pray to God. But moving on, we got USC versus Penn State. This is a big game for Big Ten. For how the Big Ten finishes out. Same with the next one, Ohio State, Oregon. But I think Penn State just looked better. USC's been bad against the run. Penn State's a team that likes to run the ball, and they do it very well. So I think running the ball travels more than throwing the ball. It's harder to throw the ball on the road than to run the ball. So I like Penn State here. I do like Ohio State against Oregon. I think Oregon hasn't really been super impressive so far. Neither technically is Ohio State. Iowa was the first team that they played that had a fucking pulse. So I'm gonna take Ohio, but am gonna take Ohio State. I think there's just too much talent on that roster. Will Howard does have some questions. We'll see how he plays now in a big time game in Eugene. UCLA, Minnesota. Minnesota's coming off a big win, traveling across halfway across the country, traveling all the way to the West Coast to play UCLA. I just see that as not a good spot for them. It's going to be a tough one. So, and then Indiana is on by as well. Next, week 8, Oregon, Purdue. Once again, Purdue bounce back after I think they lose to Ohio State. That should be not too bad. And a huge game for the Hoosiers here against Nebraska. Huge game for Nebraska as well to see kind of how they play out. I saw the starting line, I think, was 2.5, 3.5 points in favor of Indiana. I think this will be a lot more tightly contested game. I think Indiana's been averaging almost over 40 points a game. They're not. I don't think they'll get up to 40 in this game. I think it'll be a lot closer to like 23-20 score. I'm gonna roll with the Hoosiers. I think they get it done. Moving on, Northwestern, Wisconsin. Lakeside. I think Wisconsin plays them pretty well. They should do well. I don't really trust Northwestern too much. UCLA Rutgers, UCLA traveling all the way across the country to Piscataway. They're not going to win that game. Rutgers is going to win that game. Michigan versus the Fighting Illini. Michigan just they're just too one dimensional for me. I can't do it. So we're gonna roll with the Illini. Um, moving on, we got Maryland USC. I think USC gets another W here. Maryland has not been too impressive so far this year. Not a team I'm gonna back very much. Then we got Michigan State, Iowa. Michigan State. I don't know. I lost a lot of respect for that team when I saw a player going over and taking pictures of Oregon after the game after they lost by 24. Um, so I'm gonna roll with the Hawkeyes. I think they're Michigan might not score over 13 points in that game. Moving on, Rutgers USC. This is a huge game. I don't know. I really think that Rutgers runs the ball really well. And like I said before, USC has been terrible against the run, against Michigan and against Minnesota. But I think playing at home is a little bit different. I think USC wins this game. Uh, I know I had Penn State beat them on the road, but I think Penn State can run the ball and they're just a better overall team than Rutgers. Um, so yeah, that's kind of how I picked USC. Moving on, we got Indiana, Washington. I think this is a sleepy spot for Indiana. I do think Washington will most likely win this game. I think it's going to be another really good game in Bloomington, but I think Washington's going to win this game, finally give Indiana a loss and falling into the one loss column teams here. And Hoosier season definitely not over by any means by losing that game. Still 7-1 on the year. Great season. Ohio State, Nebraska, in Columbus. We're going to take the Buckeyes. Michigan State. We're going to roll Michigan. Let's see. I have Michigan at 5-3 right now. Okay. Moving on, we got Minnesota, Maryland. I'm going to roll Minnesota. I like the way they played against USC the other night. They looked pretty good. And Maryland has not really shown anything that I've liked. So Oregon, Illinois. It's a tough one for the Fighting Illini. I having to go on the road to Eugene, but I'm gonna take Oregon here. Um, yeah, and then moving up, we got Penn State, Wisconsin. This is one of my bigger upsets. I think I'll have. I think the Badgers are gonna get it done at home. I think that place is gonna get up for that game. I think it's gonna be a big time spot, sleepy spot for Penn State. Because I'm pretty sure they have Ohio State. Yeah, exactly. They have Ohio State on deck. It's a little bit of sleepy spot on the road. We're gonna roll there. And then I'm gonna roll the Hawkeyes. I do think this team is better than what they showed in Columbus last weekend. Northwestern, I still don't have a win. Same with Purdue. So there's that. Indiana, Michigan State. I think the Hoosiers will bounce back in week 10. And then Ohio State, Penn State. Because of that sleepy spot, I do think Penn State will win this game. I think it's going to be something Will Howard throws a pick or two, and it kind of has the reason they lose that game. That's what I'm thinking, and I'm thinking Penn State is going to come away with the W there at home. I think it's going to be a huge game. Penn State fans will show out. It'll be a really rowdy place to play in, and I don't think Will Howard's going to be ready for it. We got Purdue, Northwestern, the two teams I believe that I don't have with a win. Yes, 0-5 and 0-4. Maybe a little bit biased, but I think Purdue is terrible. They just got blown out by I remember they got blown out by Notre Dame, and they also got blown out by Wisco this past week. They don't look like a good team. They look terrible. We're gonna roll Northwestern. I think the Northwestern will get it done. It's also not a far trip at all. Not saying that Northwestern fans are gonna go to the game, but if they want to go to the game, not a far trip. So then we got the Fighting Illini versus Minnesota Gophers. I really like this Illini team. I really do. I think they have one of the better QBs in the Big Ten. I think they can kind of make a run to win close to 10 games. Look at this. Yeah, I got them at 7-2 right now. They don't look too bad. They look pretty solid. Wow, that is surprising. And okay, yeah. So already by because of this Penn State win, week 10, every team in the Big Ten will have at least one loss. I think that's a fair assessment. I would take that as a gambling man. I would take that by week 10, at least every team in the Big Ten has at least one loss. Wouldn't mind that. Oregon, Michigan in the big house. Oh, another huge, huge, huge game um, for Oregon. Kind of in this new Big Ten, Big 18, right? Yeah, I think there's 18. Yeah, what does it say down here? Yeah, Big 18. So, but I think the Ducks are going to win this. Michigan they're just so one dimensional. It's hard for me to take them to win a lot of games. Like if they go down in games, it is so hard for them to get back into games because they can't move the ball through the air. It's just a difficult thing to do when you can't do that. Um, to continue going on, we got Nebraska, UCLA. I think Nebraska is on the right side of things. Start winning some games again. Um, and then we got USC, Washington. Um, the old Pac-12 meeting in the new Big 18. Trying to think. Washington at home is a very tough team to beat, but USC's already 5-3. The both these teams are 5-3. I'm gonna go USC. I know they were not impressive. They did not looked impressive, but we're gonna roll USC, and then I'm gonna roll with the Hawkeyes again over Wisconsin. And surprisingly enough, I what 5-1 up there. Surprising. I did a run through this of how I thought I want to do it, kind of, and I don't remember having Iowa super high up there. So it is a little bit of surprise if you go into week 11. It's in Iowa, Oregon, Indiana, Penn State, and Ohio State, all with one loss. Um, and I just don't see Iowa losing again. Wow, this schedule for Michigan State. The Washington game's gonna be tough, but their schedule's very fair. They don't play. They play a lot of the bottom teams in the Big Ten, I think. Um, around here, so not as favorable as I thought. Moving on though, Indiana versus Michigan in Bloomington, a game I will be attending. I will be at, and I will roll with the Hoosiers, and that's because I want to go to the game, and I think they'll win. That's why am going to the game. I think this is a game they're going to win. It's going to be a huge day in Bloomington. I think the campus could explode. We'll see. Ohio State will roll Purdue. Penn State, I think, will beat Washington at home. If this was on the road, I probably would take Washington though. Just mostly good. I think a lot of the East to West Coast stuff can fuck with a lot of teams. Um, but yeah. Then moving on, we got Rutgers, Minnesota. I think Rutgers wins this, and I also think Oregon wins this. Honestly, though, looking back on it, no, we're gonna roll with the Hawkeyes. UCLA, Washington. All right, Washington finally gets a win. They get back on the right side of things. They're there at 6-5. Um, Ohio State, Northwestern, barn burner. Yep, Ohio State is gonna roll. What was that? Puts them at 6-1. Northwestern. Penn State will roll Purdue, and I think the Fighting Illini will beat Michigan State. Rutgers, Maryland is going to be a sleepy spot, I believe, for Rutgers because the Fighting Illini coming to town is a tough team. But I'm not really sure how they'll play. But I think I'm going to take Rutgers. USC, Nebraska. I think I'm going to roll with the Huskers. USC has not looked. They've looked very flawed as of late. That Minnesota game has really got me questioning them. Then Oregon, Wisconsin could be, could be, could be a tough place to play. But I'm gonna roll with the duck with the holy shit. I almost said the Buckeyes, the duck. I almost said the duck eyes. Ducks. We're gonna roll with the ducks. All right. So after week 13, we have 3 weeks left. So we have Oregon it's in at 7-1, Penn State 6-1, Ohio State 6-1, Iowa 6-1, and the Hoosiers 6-1. We got Rutgers at 5-2, Illinois at 5-2, Nebraska at 4-3. USC and Washington 4-4 to round out the top 10 there. And then here at the bottom, Purdue's the only winless team in the Big Ten. And I think it's going to change here, and they'll finally beat Michigan State. We'll give them a win. They need one. And I think Ohio State is going to actually, I think they might dominate Indiana in this game, like by a lot. I think it might be similar towards the Iowa game. But I think Indiana will be able to score some points at least. Illinois Rutgers, I really like the Fighting Illini. I think they have the better QB, and that's what I'll roll with. I mean, as good as Monungai is when you can't move the ball through the air, same thing with Michigan. It's tough to win games, especially when you're down. It's just hard. USC, UCLA, USC gets back on the right side of things with a win here. Northwestern Michigan, we're going to roll with the Wolverines in the big house. Iowa, Maryland, I think Maryland's going to upset them here. There's another team Iowa plays that's not very good in the Big Ten. Another little team that's low in the Big Ten. Penn State, Minnesota. We're going to roll with Penn State here. And then Nebraska, Wisconsin, and Nebraska. I think the Badgers will win this game. So we got up to Rutgers 8. So, yeah. So now Wisconsin 6-5, 4-4. Nebraska also 7-4, 4-4. That's about where I see these teams. So not too shabby. So now last week of the season. Three-way tie up here for first, which kind of was I expected. But last week of the season, let's see how things shape up. Minnesota versus Wisconsin. I think Wisconsin will get this W on a Friday night. Nebraska, Iowa. I think Nebraska's going to catch a W here. They go to 5-4, and they drop Iowa to a 3 loss in the Big Ten. Indiana, Purdue. I think Indiana Hoosiers will get the W here. Rutgers, Michigan State. I think Rutgers will get the W, finish the year with 9 wins. Indiana also finishing the year with 10 wins. Illinois, Northwestern. We're going to roll with the Fighting Illini here. I think they'll get the W. We got Penn State, Maryland. Penn State, Fresno State, UCLA. We'll take the Bruins. Washington, Oregon. Skip and come back to that one. Notre Dame, USC. This could be a big playoff game for Notre Dame. And USC 7-4, 5-4. I think they play a little upset here. Could be a game that is Notre Dame needs to win to kind of get into the playoff because they're light schedule. And I don't know. I think they're just a team that likes to choke. And I think they'll choke against USC. And it's not like USC has too much to play for. They'll be 8-4. Then we got Oregon, Washington. I'm going to roll the Ducks. I think it's a scary spot for the Ducks, though. I think it could be a really tight game. Washington could have a chance. And then Ohio State, Michigan. I'm going to roll with the Buckeyes. I don't trust Michigan. I think Ohio State's finally going to beat Michigan. Took them long enough. Oh, and then, yeah, so then we got the championship game. So from this, it seems Penn State would play Ohio State because Penn State and Oregon don't play. Penn State beat Ohio State, and Ohio State beat Oregon. So we'd have a Penn State, Ohio State conference championship. And I believe that Ohio State would get that revenge game that they lost to against Penn State. They'd be Big Ten conference champions. Looking at it now, just because I'm looking at the top. So that means Ohio State would get an auto bid. They'd be a first 4 team. They'd be one of the 4 teams to get a bye. Then I believe Penn State at 11-2 would still get into the playoff. Probably around like a 7-10 seed. And same thing with Oregon, 11-1. I believe they'll also get into the playoff with that record. So I think 3 teams, Penn State, Ohio State, Oregon, will all get into the playoff from the Big Ten. And then going down, you'll have Illinois finish 10-2, and Indiana you also finished 7-2. I think both those teams will probably be just outside the playoff. Probably get a pretty nice bowl game there. But other than that, they'll be just outside the playoff looking in. But, I mean, maybe It depends on how some of the other conferences do, but maybe one of those could get it, sneak in. But I don't think so. It's going to be hard with 2 losses, I think. And then finishing at sixth in the Big Ten, we got Iowa, 8-4. Then Rutgers, 9-3. It's a good season for Rutgers, 9 wins. Back towards being something maybe in football. We'll see on that. They also kind of had a light schedule this year, and the one guy will be leaving them too, so not ideal. Then in eighth, we got USC at 8-4. Ninth, Washington at 6 and actually ninth. I don't know why it does that. It's weird. But then we got Washington at 6-6, Wisconsin at 7-5, Michigan at 6-6. Michigan just hasn't been an impressive team to me. Nebraska 8-4. Yeah, I think that sounds about right. And then that's kind of rounds out the top 12 teams that are all bowl eligible. So you're gonna have 12 teams, I think, bowl eligible in the Big Ten. And then as we go towards the bottom tier of the Big Ten, which is teams that only had 2 wins or less. Minnesota 4-8. I think they could be better than that. I think it was hard to pick them in a lot of the games. They do have one of the tougher schedules, I think, left in the Big Ten. So it's just not a lot of favorable matchups for them. Maryland also kind of a similar-ish thing. I could see them maybe getting bowl eligible. I have them at 5-7 here. That's only with going 2-7 in the Big Ten. And then these bottom 4 teams are just definitely not going to make people eligible, I believe. 3-9 Northwestern, they have not really looked good at all this year. They have a new starting quarterback. Not ideal things. Purdue, 2-10, technically really the worst team in the Big Ten, but they have looked terrible. So, I mean, that's not something outrageous to have them at. Michigan State, 3-9, and UCLA 3-9, rounding out the bottom. And UCLA is bad. All these teams at the bottom are just not teams that are going to compete this year. All right, so that rounds up how I think kind of the Big Ten will shape out here. What teams I think get into the playoff, what teams are just in looking out. If you like it, let me know. Peace.